Recording the slides though, right?
There you
Okay.
go.
All right. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Don Fusick. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a member of the Tuesday Night Step Group. Sobriety date is January 5th, 1979. And I tell you that so you know it works. And, it's a beautiful thing to be in Alcoholics Anonymous. If you don't know it yet, you've hit the lottery. And it's the best thing in the world for alcoholics. Especially when you understand the history of AA, you realize that this whole thing was divinely inspired, in my opinion. You can think whatever you want, but as for me, I do another talk called The Rest of the Story. We go through like 17 different events that occur and have to occur in that order, or we're not here today. And it's a wonderful thing, and just very blessed to be here. But you're here to hear about the history, not here to hear about me. But we do go to Akron every year. We have a group we call the Ambassadors of Old Time AA. It's pretty funny. Jimmy the Book Marino and I were going up to Ray Grumney's house. He was the archivist for Dr. Bob's. And I was reading Language of the Heart, and I look in the back and it says the two meccas of AA, Akron and New York. I said, hey, Jimmy, we're going to one of the meccas of AA. We should call ourselves ambassadors. He looks at me like, what are you, an idiot? And I said, no, we'll call ourselves Ambassadors of Old Time AA. And that's how it happened. So now we do our Road to Happy Destiny tour every year, and it's a lot of fun. So if you haven't been to Akron, I strongly suggest it. You'll see a lot of stuff here, but to experience it in person is a whole nother ballgame. You'll have guaranteed multiple spiritual experiences. And if you would be interested in that, why don't you send something to Luann, and Lulu can send it to me, because it's probably just easier. I'm not good at putting things in the chat, but I'm going to do my best with this slide deal. But this is the history of Alcoholics Anonymous. You notice the old English lettering. That's because it's the history and it's old. But I have a question. Are you willing? Unfortunately, you can't get as much feedback. Do you guys see the key of willingness? There you go. It's a gold key. It opens every door. And if you're willing, the sky's the limit. So we went through the archives experience. We're going to pick up after the 1790s. Dr. Benjamin Rush wrote The Diseases of the Mind and Body. That's this book here. I don't know if you can see it. No, I can't. Let me open it to the title page. This is Medical Inquiries by Dr. Rush. This was printed in 1812. He's the first guy that ever called alcoholism a disease. And he was also a signer of the Declaration of Independence. See, we don't screw around. We have all the great people in AA. That to thine own self be true came from William Shakespeare. If you don't like Shakespeare, that's your business, but that's a great thing we stole. What does Honest Abe have to do with Alcoholics Anonymous? Well, he went and spoke to the Washingtonians, which this is a copy of their big book. Notice it says ours, and it's all kind of got stories in it and stuff like that. They only survived for 20 years, but Lincoln spoke to me. He says, you guys have an interesting set of, features that you do. He didn't drink at all, Lincoln, but he said, you know what? For some reason, when one of you talk to another, they get sober, and it's pretty insightful for a non-alcoholic to figure that out. Back then, this was 1842. They vanished from the earth before the Civil War. They were around for 20 years. This is their little temperance pledge, the Washingtonians. And you see, it says the Washingtonians Temperance Benevolent Society. They started at a Liberty Tavern in Baltimore, and it's up on a hill. It's kind of weird because the door is like half tilted, because you got to walk in and step up. It's kind of cool. But when you went, you had to bring the next time you came, you had to bring somebody with you. That's how. But they had 15 million people. We have 2 or 3 million now in U.S. and Canada. So how big they were. This is the Winchester Cathedral. This is where Bill had his first spiritual experience. If you see in the book, it says whether a veteran died by musket or by pot. What they're talking about is a pot of alcohol. And even in the early 1900s, you would go down to the corner store, well, like in New York City and that, and you take a little pot with you with a lid. My old sponsor, Jim, he had a chance to meet Bill Wilson and other things, but he went down there, used to pick it up for his dad and bring it back. And one time he said, let me try this stuff. So he tried it, left a little I don't know, fifth, sixth time, he left a little foam on his mouth. He says, "You're the son of a bitch that's been stealing my beer." Act him around. You know how that happened back in the days. But this is a really neat place if you ever get a chance to go. This is like 10 cathedrals in one. They got this little wall and a whole bunch of others. This is Frank Buchman. He founded the Oxford Group. He was running a youth hostel in Philadelphia and then also at Penn State. But in Philly, he says, "Look, we need more money for food." They said, "Get lost." He left. Typical alcoholic. You know, he figured out change. He was an alcoholic, by the way. But he said, "All right, I'll go tour Europe." He went to Keswick, England, about 7 hours north of London. And he heard of Jesse Penn Lewis, who was related to William Penn, give a little talk on the aspects of the cross. He had a spiritual awakening, spiritual experience rather, and then he sent off 7 letters, 6 to the board members and 1 to the housekeeper. How do we know? The housekeeper told us. No one else, we would have never known. Anyway, he starts with, it was called the First Century Christian Fellowship. Then these guys were going back from Oxford to Johannesburg in South Africa, and this newspaper reporter walked through the car and said, "Who are those people? They're so nice." Let me take this off. It's a little hot in here. At any rate, you know, like I told these guys before the meeting, you know, you dress up and show respect for AA. That's what the Dirty Dozen told me. He says, "You're going to talk about the program that saved your life. You're going to do it right. And that means suit and tie." I'm like, all right, relax. Or not relaxing. That's pretty fun. Those guys saved my life. But at any rate, so they were going, he says, "Who are those guys?" The reporter asked the conductor. He says, "Oh, those fellows are from Oxford." So he wrote glowing articles, said, "I met the members of the Oxford group. They were really cool." And he says, so he wrote, so they saw that and they said, "Oh, we'll call ourselves the Oxford group." So why is this important? Because they wrote a ton of books. This one on the left, For Sinners Only, and I Was a Pagan. Well, For Sinners Only was by A.J. Russell. A lot of you read or may read God Calling by A.J. Russell. It was 2 listeners of the Oxford group. He was the editor of London Times. They listened. In the Oxford group, you had a quiet time. You did some morning meditation, had a quiet time to listen for guidance. Then you shared your guidance with the checker. One of them heard something, the other didn't. The one that did told the other one, she wrote it down. They took it to A.J. Russell. He made the book. So it's pretty cool. So, and I Was a Pagan by Kitchen. And What is the Oxford group was kind of their, I don't know, like sort of like a 12 and 12. 8 points in the Oxford group tell you stuff. If you ever see any of these books, they're worth a fortune. Well, I shouldn't say that. For Sinners Only is probably worth $500 a piece now. It's crazy. This is Roland Hazard on the left. That's his son on the right. He carried the Oxford group message to Evie. How did he get that message? From this man, Dr. Carl Jung. Jung, Roland had treated with Alfred Adler, the preeminent psychologist in the United States. And he said, "Listen, I can't do nothing else for you." He's trying to get sober. He says, "Go over and see my buddy Carl Jung, not Carl Jung, Sigmund Freud in Vienna." So he goes over to see Freud. Freud says, "I don't have enough time. Go see my young associate, Carl Jung." And why was that fortuitous for us? Because Freud was not only an atheist, he was also a cocaine addict. We would have never gotten a spiritual solution from him. So he goes over to Jung. He meets, Roland does, with Jung for 6 months of treatment, goes back to, on the way back to Paris, gets drunk, comes back. He said, "Doctor, what happened?" He says, "Unfortunately, you're an alcoholic of the chronic variety. I've never seen one single case recover." He says, "Doctor, is there no hope?" He says, "Once in a while, people have had a vital spiritual experience. I suggest you try to align yourself with a spiritual group and see if you can have such an experience. Maybe you'll get sober." And he says, "Oh, that's great. I go to church." He says, "Obviously, that's not good enough, or you wouldn't be here." That's pretty funny. Jung was the character. But also Jung said he's one of the few people like Silkworth that would have said something that was outside the normal parameters of scientific and psychological thought at the time. Like, psychology is supposed to be the science of the mind. And to say that the science of the mind couldn't cure somebody of something was like blasphemy to those people. So he would have lost his medical license if they knew, but that's not what happened. And what they never found out. And he continued on the spiritual path. But this book, Modern Man in Search of a Soul, you read this in great books or something, I don't know, in high school. And Jung is a great guy. He was amazing. I had the opportunity to go to his house. The family was going on a Rhine River cruise, so I went over there. And I sent a letter with the 2 letters, the one from Bill to Dr. Jung and Jung to back to Bill. And I said, listen, your theory, spiritus contra spiritum, meaning this spiritual life can conquer the spirits of alcohol. That saved my life. I've been sober 37 years. I'd like to meet with you and check out your grandfather's library. Because I'd read somewhere, if you send a letter, maybe they'll meet with you for tea and cookies, it said. I like to say crumpets because that's more European, like tea and crumpets. That's funny. At any rate, so I'm about a week from going, and I get this email, says, oh, it'd be great to see you. Come on by, that's great. 3 o'clock's fine. We're just getting back from a trip. So when we went, went there 3 days early, went to Geneva, spoke at an AA meeting there with some friends of mine that were friends of, well, they became friends of mine, but they were friends of mine. And then I went to what's called the Institutes for Change. That's the modern name of the Oxford group. And that's in right on the cliff overlooking Lake Geneva, on the east end of Lake Geneva. And a fellow met me there and showed me all around, because that's where Buchmann had all his meetings with these people, including Hitler's representatives and stuff, trying to get the and when it was called moral rearmament, trying to get the World War II stopped. Of course, that didn't happen. But that's right. And because of that, that's why, well, New York split off in 37, but Akron didn't split till like 39. That's basically when moral rearmament was trying to do this stuff with Hitler and stop the war. But that didn't happen. So at any rate, it was cool. And then we went to Zurich, and it was neat. We went to a meeting there, 12 and 12 meeting with Josh. Josh was a delegate to the European conference, General Service Conference. So, but then we were going over to Dr. Jung's house, and this is a comedy of errors, man. We got on the wrong boat on Lake Zurich, going on the wrong side of the lake. We get off at the wrong stop, a half hour away or half mile away. We had to walk back. We get there at 4 o'clock. I said, they're not even going to let us in, and so we knock on the door, and Mrs. Andreas answered the door. Oh, I'm so glad you're late. We just got here. Come on in. And then we went up to, Andreas came down, took us up to his grandfather's library. It was awesome. And had this huge portrait of Dr. Jung, and says, hey, can you get a picture? And he said, sure. So he took a picture of us, and then Josh says, I want to take some more pictures. He said, no more pictures. I said, okay. So he says, I got this book here. I says, are you selling them? I'm buying one. So I bought one. It's pretty cool. But at any rate, he says, come on over here. I'll show you my grandfather's office. And we walk over there, and this is the office with the stained glass windows behind. You see it. I can't remember which book it's in. But at any rate, with the chair, the old chair, like library chair and stuff, used to have them at law school. I says, Andres, do you mind? Can I sit in a chair? And he says, oh, yeah, sure, go ahead. So I sit down. Says, Andres, you got to do another favor for me. Can you please take a picture? He says, sure. He takes a picture. It was horrible. The worst picture I've ever taken. We're going to need another picture, but do you mind if I tilt the chair to the door, just like your grandfather is in the photo in the AA books? He says, oh, yeah, go ahead. So he did. Took a great picture. It was awesome. Sitting in the very chair where, in my opinion, that's where Dr. Jung told Roland, you need to have a spiritual experience. And in my opinion, that's where AA started. Because without the spiritual experience or spiritual awakening, it's very hard to do this program. You can do it without a God, but it's not as easy. This is the Evie Thatcher home. This is a great place. It's up in Manchester, Vermont. His brother was running to be governor of New York. He says, Evie, with all your drinking here in Albany, you're making a bad name for the family. Listen, going up to the summer place, you look at his summer place, it's like, I don't know, 10-room mansion, whatever it is. And while you're there, he said, why don't you paint the place? So he paints it. And then the pigeons come and start doing their business, dumping all over the house. So what does a wise person do? They break out a shotgun and start shooting the pigeons. This guy, you can't make this stuff up. He is amazing with all these facts. So at any rate, they take him before the judge. He says, no drinking for a year. You got to be, I don't want to see you again. If I see you again, I'm going to throw you away, put you in the cell and lock it up and throw away the key. So what does he do? A couple of days later, he's driving around the bend, going to his house. He misses the corner. Boom, hits the neighbor's house, right into the kitchen, steps out and says, it's a nice day for a cup of coffee, isn't it, ma'am? And she says, no. She's all upset. So he went back in front of hanging Judge Graves. This is Seaver Graves. This is his son. Him and Rowan went there and said, listen, Judge, release him to us. We'll take him down to New York City. You'll never see him in Vermont again. So the judge said, okay, I'll do that, Mr. Hazard, because I know your family. Of course, Rowan was sober by this time. Seaver Graves was also in the Oxford group. And they went down, and where did they go? They went to this place, the Calvary House. This was built by Sam Shoemaker. Sam was director at the Calvary Episcopal Church here. There he is, smiling Sam. He's a great guy. Bill and Bob both said he was responsible for all of AA's 12 steps. And if we go back to this Calvary House, Sam gets over there and he says, listen, we need to, they had a Calvary mission that had 14 beds. He says, that simply won't do. We need 200 beds, other 2 floors for staff and I said, well, Sam, if you can raise the money, you can build it. Obviously, he's a visionary, but sounds more like an alcoholic, doesn't he? I mean, we got to have 200 beds. What? He can't start with 50 or whatever. So he builds this house, this place, gets the money, raises it, builds it. Why is this important? That's where they took Ebby. And then subsequently, they told Ebby, listen, as part of our program, here's Ebby on the right. This is Bill and Ebby at the 51 California State Convention. A couple of dapper gents, huh? And Ebby actually died sober. Tommy D was one of the 10 people at the funeral, said Bill wanted everybody to know his sponsor, Ebby, died with 2 years sober. So Ebby goes there and they said, listen, part of our program is you help others. He says, oh, I know a guy that drinks a lot. He's like 40 blocks north of here. So he goes up and see Bill. And this is Leonard Strong. He's a brother-in-law of Bill Wilson, his sister's husband. And why is that important? Because he knew the people at the Rockefellers. But this is Towns Hospital. He paid the bills for Bill to go there. Bill was there 4 times, the last time December 11th, 1934. And that's when he had the spiritual experience in that stay, probably a couple of days after he checked in. At any rate, notice the cars there from the 50s, I think, with the big fins. Those are cool. And we went there with a good friend, Gail LaCroix. I guess it's, well, whatever. You know, this is just don't share this with outside people. At any rate, we go there and we're taking some pictures, and this guy opens his window. He says, what are you guys doing here? I said, oh, this is a famous place back from the 30s. He says, oh, really? And he says, we asked him, like, what does the 6th floor look like? He says, I don't know, we'll let you in. So we got admitted to Towns, went up to the 6th floor, and there was nothing there, of course, but that's where, you know, everything was done with Towns Hospital. So it was kind of cool. So Bill's there, and Ebby talks to him. And this is a little Dr. Love Drunks, Dr. Silkworth, or Silky. And Silky was working with Bill, and Bill had this white light spiritual experience. He says, doctor, something happened. I had this white flash like the clean mountain air from a mountaintop wind. And he says, listen, Bill, I don't know what happened to you, but whatever it is, you better hold on to it. It's a lot better than you were before. So he goes on, and then Ebby shows up a couple of days later with this book, Varieties of Religious Experience. This is William James. He's the father of American psychology, but he did the series of these lectures at Edinburgh College in Scotland, and they wrote a book about it. And so Bill read this. He says, oh, that's what happened to me. I had a spiritual experience. So it was pretty cool. So then Ebby takes him down to the Calvary Mission. Well, let's go back. He takes him down to the Calvary House, and, you know, that's where they went to meetings. And then they do what they called an altar call, and people come up and share their stories. So Bill runs up there. Ebby's trying to hold him back when he can. And Bill gets up there, he said some alcoholic talk. He was all drunk. It's pretty funny. Not recorded, thank God. At any rate, that's how that happened. And this is 182 Clinton Street in Brooklyn. This is where Bill and Lois lived when he was going through this stuff and getting sober. He worked on drunks for 6 months, couldn't get any of them sober. And he said, Lois, I'm just going to go back to working at Wall Street. You know, you're working at Macy's. This is ridiculous. I can make $1 million a year over there. And she says, but Bill, you stayed sober. And so shortly thereafter comes up this opportunity to go to Akron to buy the National Rubber Machinery Company. And they secured 40% of the stock certificates before they even got out there on proxies and to win. But then they got wind of it in Akron, and they basically put the squelch on it. And this is a letter from Bill to Ebby. He says, may this be your best Christmas in many a year. Of course, this is the first year in many a year that they were both sober in New York City. Can you imagine that? You ever have an old drinking buddy show up and they're sober? It's like, holy shit. Oops, sorry. Try not to use those words. So this is Frank Buchman here, and they had what they call a house party for the Oxford group. Now, how did this come into being? Well, what happened was Bud Firestone and James Newton went to the Oxford Convention in Denver. And on the train ride back, Sam Shoemaker got Bud Firestone sober. So out of gratitude, he'd been trying to get sober for 10 years. You know, he had all the money in the world with Harvey Firestone, he owned Firestone Tire and Rubber, was very rich. But he couldn't get him sober. So this was in, I guess, 32. In 33, he had them all come to Akron for a house party. What their house party was 10 days. And they spoke at all the Akron area churches, and then they had workshops in between. And you know how they have, like, if you ever been to a quarterly or general service assembly here in Area 15, we have the weekend workshops, you know, like various committees like archives and so on. And so they had those meetings, and out of that, they started having meetings in Akron. They had the West End group that met at 8 o'clock on Thursday night. Does that sound like an AA meeting time? Absolutely. And actually, our West Side men's group meets 7:30 on Thursday here in Broward. At any rate, these guys all show up, and they start having Oxford group meetings. And when Bill comes to town to try to buy the National Rubber Machinery Company, he's at the Mayflower Hotel. The whole deal falls through. They got wind of it. They secured all the other stock options and blew them out of the water. And he's left there with $10 to his name, not enough money to pay the hotel bill or to get on the train and go back to New York. So he says, you know what, I need to do something. I'm going to have a drink. And he walks by. Here's the tinkling of glasses in the bar there. There's actually 3 bars in the Mayflower. But he says, you know, I need to call and find another alcoholic. So he looks at this church director and he sees this name Walter Tunks. And Tunk in Vermont is a long walk in the woods, very spiritual type of thing. So he goes through there and he calls this guy up, and lo and behold, he didn't notice, but Walter Tunks was the head of the Oxford group in Akron. And he says, listen, I'm getting busy with my preparing my Mother's Day sermon tomorrow, but you can call one of these 4 people. They'll help you out. One of those was Norman Shepherd. And Norman Shepherd said, why don't you call Henrietta Seiberling? Bill says, oh, I know that name. You know, of course, Seiberling owned the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. He lost it in the early 20s, but then he formed the Seiberling Tire and Rubber Company. And actually, I got some of the shoes with their heels on them. I just got them in the mail the other day. It's pretty cool. But that became one of the top 5 or 6 tire companies in the world. So he says, I can't call her. You know, he thought it was the wife of the owner of Goodyear Tire and now Seiberling Tire. So he calls her last, and what does she say? This is Walter Tunks. We went over to his house. You can go there on our trip, and we took pictures, and these people come out and, what are you taking pictures of our house? He said, well, this is Tunks' house. He said, what? Explained it to him, and he said, oh, okay, cool. So at any rate, and this is Henrietta. She was a proud member of the Oxford group. It was a great, very vociferous member, and she did not want AA to split from the Oxford group. But she says, you know, she was very involved with Dr. Bob. They had what they called a no pussyfooting around meeting back, I don't know, 2 months before Bill came to town. And Delphine Weber came and said, hey, you know, Dr. Bob has a major problem with drinking. We got to do something. So they had this meeting at T. Henry and Clarice Williams' house. And there they basically did an intervention. It started with Henrietta, went all the way around and came to Dr. Bob, and he says, well, you people have all shared some very serious things in your life and what you're doing to do, resolve them. He said, but this could cost me my profession. I'm a silent drinker. I cannot stop. And everybody actually surprised, even though they all knew. And he says, well, Dr. Bob, would you like us to pray for you? So they pray for him. And then 2 months later, Bill shows up. But in between, Henrietta said she got guidance. He called up Ann and says, Ann, you got to have Dr. Bob come right over. I got some guidance for him. And he gets over and he says, what's the guidance? He says, you must not take 1 drop of alcohol. Like, can you imagine that? Just don't drink. Somebody tell you that after that? Oh, Dr. Bob was not happy. This is Ann Smith. She was Henrietta Seiberling's checker. She also led the morning meditation between the 2 co-founders, or with the 2 co-founders, not the 2 co-founders, either Dr. Bob or Bill. And Ann led it. We were at Dr. Bob's house in 1998 for the 3rd National AAU Archives workshop. And we just got done. I had a sponsor there. I said, listen, you're going to Akron with me for the workshop. You need to get a revitalized. He had a slip. So we went up there and did the surrender in Dr. Bob's room. We come back down. As we're coming down, Sue and Smitty, Dr. Bob is kids are coming up the stairs. They sat down on the couch and told stories for 2 hours. I wish I would have had a smartphone if we recorded it. But what happened was they said a bunch of things, but one of them, he says, neither of the two co-founders led the morning meditation. It was Ann, in the chair on the left by the fireplace and so on. But he also said, he talked about on the ride over to go see Henrietta, it says, I'll give this bird 15 minutes tops, when he's talking about, Bill Wilson, because what happened was Henrietta had called Ann and said, Ann, we got this guy coming from New York City. He claims he's got a cure for alcoholism. You got to bring Dr. Bob right over. She says, he's hemming and hawing. And Dr. Bob said, oh, Henry, she could really bore in. And she said, now listen, Ann, this is our chance. Like, no messing around here. He says, all right, listen, Dr. Bob brought me home a nice potted plant for Mother's Day. Unfortunately, he's also potted underneath the table in no condition to go anywhere. So she doesn't stop. She says, all right, you got to come over tomorrow at 6. Can you imagine that? One of the prime drinking days, Sunday. You can't drink till, after you get done with this stupid meeting with this guy. So on the way over there, Smitty told us this story that Dr. Bob said, I'll give this bird 15 minutes tops. Basically, we'll be out of there so fast his head will spin. And but they didn't stay for 15 minutes. They stayed 6 hours and 15 minutes, as Dr. Bob says in his story. And Henrietta took one look at Dr. Bob and said, she saw the bloodshot eyes and all that. She said, I better usher them right in. And so they that's how they talked. It was cool. You go there, you used to be able to hear tapes of them. I think they still have a few of them, but they redid the place. It's really nice. And they made it much more just like it was with the old time stuff. And this is the Gate Lodge. This is where they met. The library, if you can see, I can't really do the pointer thing, but you see the chimney there. It was right next to that little house or little roof there. That's the roof over the library. That's where they met. It's a room like 10 by 10. It's a beautiful place, and you can feel the spirituality there as well. This is Dr. Bob, the elder statesman picture. This is cool. He was not known to smile a whole lot, but he was a quite very nice guy. Dr. Bob and Bill, they claim, never had an argument. This is one of the few smiling pictures of Dr. Bob. You notice his fancy tie. That's why I wear these ties. I don't know if you can see this tie, but it's pretty wild. I don't know. And the Argyle socks in tribute to Dr. Bob, because that's just a great thing. And they were very happy. They courted, Dr. Bob courted her for 17 years and then popped the question. But that's how it was. So this is Dr. Bob's house. There are 12 steps leading up to Dr. Bob's, as you can't see them all here. But when you go there, we take each step individually and say the step as we take it. Take step 1. We admitted we were powerless. 2, came to believe. 3, made a decision. Get the 3rd step, it broadens out. We do the 3rd step prayer. 4, 5, 6, 7 broadens out. Do the 7th step prayer. Get up to the top, and somebody reaches out a hand and says, welcome home. And it moves me just even talking about it now. But this is a neat place. It's they don't have, this is an old picture, doesn't have the national landmark on there. I helped Ray get ready for Founders Day, I don't know, like 15 years, and used to pressure clean the sidewalks, do whatever else. But we put up you go there, there's 2 plaques to the top back we put up back in, I want to say 210 or somewhere in there, I don't know. This is City Hospital of Akron. Why is this important? This is where Dr. Bob took his last drink. He had just gotten back from the AMA convention in Atlantic City, and he claims he drank all the scotch on the train, called his nurse to pick him up, and he had this operation like 2 days later. So Bill and Ann went over, picked him up, tapered him off, and then Bill and Bob were sharing this Smitty's room with 2 twin beds, and Smitty was there, wasn't there, but they woke up about 4 o'clock, and Dr. Bob says, I'm going to go through this thing. He says, what, the operation? He says, no, this program of yours. He says, oh, great. So they get over to the hospital, City Hospital here. It's around back. You can see the old building still. And he gave him a beer and a goofball, which is like a Valium. Dr. Bob takes it, does the operation, drops them off at home, and it is gone for like the rest of the day till like 9 o'clock. He gets home. And they figured he's out drinking, because the beer triggered the allergy. But that's not what happened. He was making amends. If you listen to his tape, don't ever, CD, whatever, MP3, who knows, whatever you're going to hear it on. Don't do that. Talk to your sponsor first. Don't make amends the first day. Not a good idea. This is Bill Dotson on the left was AA number 3. His wife was also named Henrietta, and they went to see him, told his story, and how that happened was Dr. Bob called up to City Hospital and says, listen, I got a cure for alcoholism. Do we have any alcoholics on this? Yeah, we got a guy, he dotted the I's, made black eyes on 2 nurses. He's tied down right now. And Dr. Bob says, give him this, whatever, a couple, sedatives or who knows what. So they did that. And the nurse says, by the way, Dr. Bob, have you tried this cure on yourself? That's amazing. We got the best people in AA, stuff like that. And he says, as a matter of fact, I have. And so it's pretty cool. Dr. Bob and Sister Ignatia got over 5,000 drunk sober, one of which was this guy, Ernie Galbraith, number 7. He had the 7th month slip. And then he went back out and he showed up at Dr. Bob's funeral, though. And he was sober. He was sober for 2 years in Youngstown. Pretty cool. This is T. Henry and Clarice Williams' house. Look on the right here, or I guess, yeah, it's right as you're looking at it. That's Sue Smith Windows, Dr. Bob's daughter. This is from the 60s. You see these fancy, I don't know what that is. Looks like a Ford Galaxy 500 or something. I don't know. But this is the house. This is where Dr. Bob took step 1, admitted he was powerless over alcohol. He said, I'm a silent drinker. I cannot stop. But if you look closely, you can see the arch up here at the front door, the arch through which we pass a free man at last, as it says in the book. The spiritual structure that we build, and it's a wonderful thing. This is where Oxford group meetings were held. We go to this house as well, and unfortunately, a couple of these big trees got knocked down in a storm. This is King's School, a group number 1. They used to meet at Dr. Bob's house when they split off from the Oxford group, and they met there. They had 70 people there, and if you've been to Dr. Bob's, it's a tiny place. I mean, you could probably fit 20, 30 people in there comfortably, but not 70. I don't know. They must have been up and down the stairs everywhere, So they moved over here to King's School, and on the top of King's School, you can't see in this picture, but it says, and they govern of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. The last phrase of the Gettysburg Address, of course, for those of you that know any of the history of, it's the greatest speech in the world, probably, or one of them. It was on top of here. They tore this down and rebuilt a new place. Now King's School Group still meets there at 9 on every Wednesday at I think it starts at 8. And we get there at 6, so you get a seat for Founders Day weekend. It's jammed. There's probably 500 people that show up at a meeting. It's really cool. Another spiritual experience, but you see a ton of people related that know a lot of the history. And Gail, my good friend Gail, still goes there on the Zoom as well as in person when she's there. At any rate, this is cool. Dr. Bob used to sit, if you go in this door, go down the stairs, they used to meet in the classroom on the right. Dr. Bob used to sit in the last seat at the very diagonal to the door. And after he passed, nobody would sit there for a year, and then some newcomer came in and sat on the seat, and then that was over. But it's pretty neat. You used to be able to sit there, now you can't because it's gone. These are a couple of other guys. This is Clarence Snyder, the home brewmeister in the book. He started the first meeting called Alcoholics Anonymous in May 1939. Why did he do that? Because the bishop in Cleveland said, you guys going down to the Oxford group, that's blasphemy. It's another religion. You can't do that. So he met with Dr. Bob. He said, Dr. Bob, the bishop is saying this. He says, we're going to start our own meeting. And we're going to call it after the book, because the book had just came out. We're going to call it Alcoholics Anonymous. And Dr. Bob said, that's great. I'll show up. So he went to the first meeting. It was in a doctor's house that was in rehab, but his wife said we could use the place. So unbeknownst to the good doctor, we used this house for the first AA meeting. This is Abby Goldrick. He's another guy. He thought he could drink like a gentleman, and he couldn't. Imagine that. This is Sister Ignatia. Like I said, her and Dr. Bob got over 5,000 drunk sober. This is playing the organ up in the loft at St. Thomas Hospital. Unfortunately, they had renovated the place and took the organ out, but now they're tearing the whole place down. You won't be able to see it anymore, but they're going to put up a little museum. I don't know, 2 or 3 rooms or so, I don't know, in the new building they're building right across from City Hospital. So it's pretty cool. So you'll be able to see a lot of the stuff that was here. But we went up to, I don't know how am I doing on time? Oh, all right. At any rate, this is the original St. Thomas Hospital. This is right after it was set up, but now, well, there's a bunch of trees, but it'll all be knocked down. But once Sister Ignatia got, when Dr. Bob passed, she had a nervous breakdown for 2 years, and then they reassigned her to St. Vincent Charity Hospital in Cleveland, and assigned her to the second floor and AA. Of course, there was hardly any second floor, maybe 10 rooms. So she called up all the guys who went through the AA stuff and said, hey, listen, this is what they did. I need you to build me some rooms. So they built 20 rooms, this whole wing for free, all the materials, all the labor free. And she called it Rosary Hall Solarium after Dr. Bob, Robert Holbrook Smith, RHS. So we went up there to try to find the sign that said Rosary Hall Solarium. And they said, oh, we don't know where that is. But I said, listen, did they have a meditation room? I'd like to go visit it. And they said, yeah, but it's a Matt Talbot retreat for women. Let me ask them if you can come in and visit the room. So my buddy Jimmy, the book Marino, he says, oh, I'm going out for a smoke. He was not patient. And but those who wait, good things come. And they come back like 3 or 4 minutes later and said, hey, you can go. I said, well, my buddy went out for a smoke, but I'll go. So I went over there, went into this room. It's like a little hospital room, 10 by 15 or whatever. But it could feel the spirituality oozing out of the walls. It was just, it still gives me the shudders. I was there and saying some prayers on my knees for about 5 minutes. And she comes back and I said, listen, I need another 5 minutes. She said, okay. She came back and it was so cool. When you feel these original events in the places where they occurred, like doing the surrender at, well, now Sue's bed and Dr. Bob's home, where the first 100 did on their knees, holding nothing back, you will have a great spiritual experience, and this will solidify your sobriety if it's not already. And I don't know, it's just, I'm very grateful for these opportunities. So at any rate, continued on from St. Thomas, and this is Bill and Bob. Once again, they never had an argument, but it looks like they had a disagreement here. I don't know, or they weren't happy with their picture being taken. But you see, Dr. Bob's got another colorful tie, as usual. That's his MO. This is Hank Parkhurst. This guy had a minute, the fiery redhead, they called him. He had a minute idea every minute. He's the one that said, listen, we got to do the book thing. I know just what we can do. We'll get these stock certificates. It's coming up. Anyway, this is he says, I'll go over and get these stock certificates and then we'll sell them to the people for $5. And I think it was $30, $5 a month, something like that. At any rate, this guy, he was employed by Standard Oil. They fired him for his drinking. He says, you're making a big mistake. I'll put Standard Oil out of business. Of course, that didn't happen, but it's amazing, our history. You can't make this stuff up. He then says to them, he starts up this outfit called Honors Dealer Company, and it's in the Calumet building in Newark. This is where they wrote the big book. I think we're coming up on that. Let's look at this. This is Fitz Mayo. He was our Southern friend. He was from the DC area. He was the one they said, listen, we're thinking about calling the book The Way Out. Why don't you go down to the Library of Congress and see how many way outs there are? He reports back to Bill. I said, Bill, there's 12 way outs. We don't want to be the 13th way out. So that got scuttled, of course. Who wants to be the 13th of anything? It's just not good luck, I guess. Who knows? This is Willard Richardson. This guy was a great guy. He was the head of the Rockefeller Charities. We got to him through Leonard Strong, he's Bill's brother-in-law, and he says, I know this guy Willard. Let's talk to him, because they were trying to dig up some money. And Willard says, I like this idea. Let's bring it over to John D. So they had a meeting with John Rockefeller, with all the money that Rockefellers had, billions, I guess, even then. So they listened to him, and Albert Scott, one of the guys there. Well, they had Bill, Bob, 2 other drunks. I can't remember exactly who, but Albert Scott, Willard Richardson, Frank Amos, and a couple others. And they're telling their stories. And Albert says, this is nothing but first century Christianity. This is why it's working. And then Rockefeller says, you know what? Let's get some information on this. So what happens is, this guy, Frank Amos, goes out to Akron on his own dime. He says, let me invest. Talks to everybody. He comes back with his glowing report. Yeah, it's doing great. They need $50,000, pay off Dr. Bob's mortgage, set up a hospital for Dr. Bob, all these other things. And word gets back, they have another meeting with Rockefeller. He says, I think money will ruin this thing. I'm going to give you guys $5,000. I'm going to put it in the Riverside Church. We're going to pay off Dr. Bob's mortgage and, help Bill out with his stuff. And then you guys can draw a monthly stipend, but don't ever come back for any more money. I said, okay. So 50,000 dropped down to 5,000. And despite Frank's glowing report, this is Harry Emerson Fosdick. This guy wrote the review in the big book on the religious view of Alcoholics Anonymous. He's also the Reverend at the Riverside Church. If you go there, I usually ask how many people have been to GSO, but if you go to GSO, you can park there and it parks down on the ground, come up the elevator, and you come out the elevator, instead of just turning right and going right out, go around to the back of the elevator. There's a big sign that says, this is partially due to the Rockefeller family, and some other stuff. It's really cool. It's a neat little, if you're into history. I don't know, I'm being called a nerd by Lulu, but I very into the history because listen, when you know this stuff, you can't help but think this was spiritually ordained or whatever. I mean, God got tired of drunks dying. That's the only way I could see it. When he tried with the Washingtonians, it didn't work. Then the Emmanuel movement, it didn't work. Oxford group, it didn't work, sort of worked. And then we split off in AA, and then AA worked. But some of the early pamphlets of AA pamphlets, Alcoholics Anonymous is the Jack Alexander article, which was pretty cool. We'll talk about that in a bit. This is Medicine Looks at Alcoholics Anonymous. What about the alcoholic employee? And if you see over on the left, this is the original AA group pamphlet, which is a little hard to see. But this is Honors Dealer. This was where they wrote the big book manuscript. And this woman, Ruth Hawk, typed up all the drafts of the original big book manuscript. She got the 50th million copy of the book, but she was hired to be a secretary for this oil company. And he says, I don't know what's going on here, but people over here on their knees, other ones are passed out. They're doing the surrender. We don't know what's going on. And so it's really great. And she got paid with these, the Worthless Works Publishing Inc. stock certificates that Hank drew up. Hank went down to the corner office supply store and said, oh, yeah, we want to call it Works Publishing. He says, are you guys incorporated? Yeah, we will be, whatever, typical, half-measured approach, I guess you'd call it, whatever. But notice it says capital stock, 25 grand, par value, $25. This is one share, number 41. Ruth Hawk is a secretary. And some of these, it has Hank Parkhurst as the president. Bill looks at it and says, how come I'm not the president? He says, don't worry about it, Bill. It doesn't matter. It's just a stock certificate. So that's the kind of guy he was. Pretty funny. So, but they sold a bunch of these, and then they sold them to Hank too, and Hank got drunk, and then they they traded some furniture for his stock certificates and got them back. So we were able to keep control of. This is The Common Sense of Drinking by Richard Peabody. This guy wrote this book in something like 1932, 33. And we got the phrases, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, from this book, and also half measures availed us nothing. Unfortunately, Richard Peabody wrote this book, and about 5 years later got drunk and died. It's horrible. At any rate, this guy, Eugene Exman, of Harper's Magazine, he helped edit the big book. When Reader's Digest vacated the scene, they went up there and said, they brought him a couple of the pre-stories that Bill did, Bill's story, and I think more about alcoholism. He said, oh, this is great. We'll do an article once it comes out. And he said, when are you going to get done? He said, 6-8 months, whatever. So they go back when they got the manuscript on it and says, hey, we're ready for that. We're ready to shoot on that Reader's Digest piece. He says, what piece? And then he says, oh, you remember we gave you this Bill story? And then he says, oh, yeah, I forgot to call you. I had a meeting with my editors. They didn't like the idea, so we can't do it. And they were like, oh, this is horrible. So they had 5,000 books in the warehouse, and they could only get 500 of them. They gave one to everybody that wrote a story. And then Rockefeller bought some, and they had the Rockefeller dinner where they gave all these books out, probably 50 of them, maybe 100 of them. But John was sick, so Nelson was chairman. He said, by the way, my father wanted to tell you, he thinks money will ruin this thing, but we give them our firm support. They're a great organization. And so we got Rockefeller's word, but not his money. But that was big. That was a big boost to us. Now, remember, we showed 182 Clinton Street where Bill and Lois were. Unfortunately, they got evicted from there because they couldn't pay the mortgage, and they ended up here at the 23rd and a half Street clubhouse at 24th Street. Notice the arch through which you walk a free person as you come in here. This sign here, you can only see the bottom of it, but they used to call it, say, the longest mile. And this is Bill and Lois's room on the second floor. Why is that important? Because that's where they stayed. And this is the interior of the clubhouse, you know, with Dr. Bob and Bill, and of course, Silky. He was there. You see our early slogans: first things first, easy does it, live and let live. They're up there as well. One of the great stories here was that Tom, the caretaker, heard this knock about, 8 o'clock at night. It's a rainy night. He opens the door and says, hey, does Bill Wilson live here? And the guy says, hang on a minute. So he goes and yells up the stairs, hey, Bill, I got another one. You want me to send him up or send him away? He says, I'll send him up. Father Ed clumps up the stairs. He's got one foot that's 3 inches shorter than the other. And so he's clumping up the stairs. He gets in the room, unzips his rain jacket, and he's got a collar on. And Father Ed Dowling says, are you the guy that wrote the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous? Because he had read the book and he's very interested in it. Actually started a meeting in St. Louis. And he says, yes, I am. He says, you stole those ideas from the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius, didn't you? And Bill says, the who of what? What are you talking about? And obviously, Bill didn't know. And Father Ed said, oh, so it dawned on him that he came on it himself. If you ever see the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius, they're very much like our 12 steps. St. Ignatius was a warrior in what is now Spain. He got wounded and they couldn't take him with them. So they stuffed him in a monastery and he started reading books and had a spiritual experience and wrote the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius, basically what he did to have a spiritual experience. They actually have books on that and they have retreats and everything. I went over there to try to find out more about Father Ed Dowling to the Institute for Jesuit Studies, it turns out, because he was aligned with that college. And so I made an appointment. I go over there and I'm talking to the secretary. And she says, oh, you're the one who wants to talk about Father Ed Dowling. I said, yeah. He said, oh, this guy was amazing. He'd come in the room and light the whole room up. He was so full of energy and always laughing and joking, having a great time. He led the CANA, C-A-N-A, it's a Catholic thing, retreats and meetings. And the guy was phenomenal and just had a huge, and then she said, oh, the guy will see you. And I go in to see this guy. He's like Mr. Dry Toast, Oh, yes. He cited a couple of facts. And I said, all right, thank you very much. He never met him. So I go back out and talk to the secretary and I found out more about Father Ed from her than anywhere. It was amazing. And I got a bunch of books and they have a little, I ran out of them, but there's, it's a 64-page book that runs through the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius over a month period. It's pretty cool. This is Father Ed himself. This is the older one. I don't know if you can see this. This is the younger Father Ed Dowling. I got this at the 50th anniversary of the 55 International in St. Louis. They were going to throw it away. I said, let me take that. And he said, okay. So I got one of the, I had this shirts done, at the dry cleaner. I took one of them. I rolled it up in there so it wouldn't stick to each other and then came back and put it on the board. It was cool. So I don't know where we're at time-wise. You get lost in this stuff. This is Harry Tebow. He was the one that wrote, he was Bill's psychiatrist. He also was at, this says Blythewood Sanitarium, but also Bellevue. And while he was there, he had this client, Marty Mann. He said, you should read the manuscript. She starts looking at it like, this is ridiculous. She would have in the corner. She was out on a weekend pass and come back. Where's that manuscript? And she read it, got sober on the manuscript. She was the founder of the National Council on Education and Alcoholism. She was amazing. She had quite a wit. She was going to speak in Dallas, and this guy wrote this article. It says, Lady Lush coming to speak to, Dallas about alcoholism. And she calls him up. Are you the guy that wrote this article? He says, yeah, listen, it's Lady X Lush. Damn it. Hung up the phone. It was awesome. You can't make this stuff up. This is amazing. And so this is High Watch Farm. I had the privilege of knowing Cersei. He got Ebby sober. He said he was up in New York. He said, Bill, what's the deal with this thing, with Ebby? And he says, oh, he's drunk in the Bowery. And what would you like to do? He says, I'd like to get Ebby sober. He's my sponsor. So he took him down to Dallas. Cersei had moved the Institutes for Alcohol Study that was at Yale University to Dallas, and they was getting ready to just get rid of Ebby. He said, that's enough. We tried 30 days, can't do nothing with this guy. But then he took a shine to a nurse. He got sober, stayed sober for 2 years till she died, got drunk again, then found another nurse, got sober. And then he came up here to High Watch Farm in Connecticut, and then he ultimately passed when he was 2 years sober. Tommy told us that. She was one of 9 people or 10 people at the funeral. It's a pretty cool place. This is the group sneeze photograph, we call it. It's the first anniversary dinner of the Akron group, June 10th, 1945. Notice all these people have these napkins up by their mouth. They're trying to preserve anonymity. So it's the group sneeze. That's what Frank Mauser, the former archivist of AA, used to call it. This is Earl Treat. He spent 2 weeks at Dr. Bob's house, started AA in Chicago and his folks in Minneapolis. He sold himself short. If you look at page, I think it's 292 in the 3rd edition, he lists the 6 steps that were in use at that time before Bill created the 12 steps when he wrote How It Works. This is the 1950 convention, the first international in Cleveland. This has 12 traditions accepted. That's kind of a misnomer. I'm telling you about Cersei. Cersei says a couple things about the tradition. One is he picked Bill up at the Dallas airport, and then they were driving west to they stopped for lunch, like 2 hours west, and Bill whipped out these 2 pieces of loose leaf paper and says, hey, Cersei, what do you think of these? And he looks at them and hands them back, and he says, that may be fine for you Yankees, but we don't need those down here in Texas. It was at 12 traditions. So that was in 48. Cersei got sober in 46. So now they're at the International, and Bill and Bob got all the movers and shakers, as Cersei called them, up in the room on the second floor. They said, listen, Dr. Bob's dying of cancer. He'll be dead before the end of the year. In fact, he died November 16th, 1950. And they said, you got to go down on the floor, make sure everybody votes for this, because we need these 12 traditions to keep AA around. If we don't do that, AA will die off, just like the Washingtonians. And so they went down on the floor and twisted arms. And Bill said, when I see it looks like it's going to, I'm just going to call the question. So it looks like it's good. He says, he raises his hand, call the question on the traditions. All in favor? Yes. All opposed? None. Unanimous. That's it. There was no business meeting. There was no nothing. It was like a 2-second vote. And half the people, they said, Bill, Bob, nobody knows about these damn traditions. We don't even want you to come and talk about them. And they said, so that's how they got passed. So lucky us. This is Bill and Bob at Bill was trying to promote AA once again. Oh, excuse me, attract more people to AA. And accordance with the traditions. And Dr. Bob says, I want AA to stay in Akron. No, that's the joke. It's actually not true. But this is a 55 International in St. Louis because of Father Ed Dowling. This is where, just before Dr. Bob passed, he says, Bill, why don't you try that conference thing of yours? I think that might be a good solution. And so then they started the first General Service Conference, 1951. In 55, they published the book AA Comes of Age, which you guys are going to start reading next week, I guess. And that's pretty cool. That's an awesome book. But he said now that the General Service Conference is working, General Service Conference is going to be the voice of AA. And this is a telegram from Eisenhower saying congratulations on a great convention. And this one on the bottom is the 30th anniversary. Basically what it was at the 4th International. They accepted the I Am Responsible pledge there. This was at the Royal York Hotel in Toronto. I had the privilege of staying there for the 2005 International. It was awesome. And it's a neat little old Art Deco hotel. It's pretty cool. This is, of course, the 1970 International Miami Beach. This is where Bill Wilson made his last talk for 6 minutes. He had the emphysema, could hardly speak. And he sat down and Wesley Parrish finished the talk for him. He's the reason was in Miami Beach. They used to call Wesley Parrish the Chuck Chamberlain of the South. Speaking of Wesley, this 1980 convention in New Orleans, he had a luncheon there. And he had met Joe and Charlie. Have you guys ever been to the Big Book Seminar, Joe and Charlie? Well, he heard them in like someplace in Nebraska or something. He said, these guys are really good. So he's had this lunch at New Orleans, handed out these cassettes, I guess at the time, he spread them out so they go all around the country. And then they started the Big Book Seminar in 1982 in Pompano and Sacramento, and it took off from there. This is the 85 convention. I heard about that 3 weeks after I started a new job as a law clerk for a law firm, and I said, man, I can't go. I couldn't tell them, listen, I got to take 5 days off for the convention. Like, really? Didn't you just start? It wouldn't have gone over well. But this was Lois's last convention, and this is where Ruth got the 5 Millions book. These are the checks from the Alcoholic Foundation. We paid Rockefeller back, one of the few entities that did so, and this was cool. Rockefeller helped us many ways, but some additional money, but not publicly. This is a great magazine, Alcoholics and God. We had 200 members. This came out. This is by Morris Markey, and it is called Liberty Magazine. And where membership went from 200 people up to 800 people, and it was great. These are collector's items as well. This is Jack Alexander. He wrote the Saturday Evening Post article, March 1st, 1941. At that time, we had 2,000 members. He was a famous, what they called muckraker back in the day, investigating people, kind of like 60 Minutes now. And he went out to Akron to bust AA's chops, and then he discovered that it was actually a very good society, group of people that are working very well, saving people, and he wrote a glowing article. We went from 2,000 members in March 41 to 8,000 members at the end of 41, and really, rocketed AA into, we got out of money problems because we were selling books and so on. But he was a great guy. He became a member of the board and everything else. This is Bernard Smith. He was the architect of the General Service Conference and the General Service structure. This guy was amazing. He was a corporate lawyer, another lawyer. Imagine that. At any rate, he was great, very humble, and is very nice. And without him, we wouldn't be here either. Because without a structure, there'd be no way to run the General Service Conference. And I had the privilege of serving as a delegate. And this is speaking of the General Service Conference. This is the one in '53 when Bill was at, and this is in the old Roosevelt Hotel. I think they just tore it down. I wanted to go there and see it, but going to New York City for a while until they clean it up. This is the 75th anniversary edition of the Big Book. I had the privilege of being at the General Service Conference in 2013, and this guy gets up to the mic and says, "We don't need this. It's a trinket. It's a facsimile." And I almost ran up and snapped the guy's head off. How dare you call it a book that saved my life a trinket or facsimile, as he said it. I was pissed. And so I go up there and says, "How many of you people have even seen a first edition, first printing of the Big Book?" Now, remember, General Service Conference has 90 delegates, 21 trustees, and something like 20, 30 staff, whatever, total 130 people. 30 people raise their hand. I says, "How many people know that the doctor's opinion was on page 1 of the first edition, first printing?" 25 hands go up. I says, "How many people know that Dr. Soakwood did not even sign the first edition, first printing of the Big Book because he would have lost his medical license?" 20 hands go up. I said, "So, see, you people, even you people at the alleged height of AA service, even you could benefit from having this published. You should pass this and pass it now." And I sat down and I broke out this book called The Advisory Actions. And it's basically the book of all the past motions passed by this conference. I turned to archives in 1951. Conference approved a facsimile copy of the Lasker Award, and Lasker's award for progress in medical, medical deals for. It was for alcoholism, the cure for alcoholism, or working with alcohol. So I run back up to the mic. I says, "Listen, one more thing for you guys. In 1951, this very same conference passed a facsimile copy of the Lasker Award." I told him what it was. And it was, to be made available to all the groups. I said, if it was good enough for this conference 60 years ago, it's good enough for this conference now. You need to pass this and pass it now. And that's it. And I sat down and they all looked at me like I was, from Mars or something. It was awesome. But then they passed it 100 to 30. It was awesome. And that's how we got the book. Otherwise, that was part of the minority opinion. Of course, a double dip, but, had to, nobody else knew the history other than Michelle, and she's the archivist. She can't really speak at the mic, so I had to carry that. I said before I left, I says, I may have to ride herd on the conference, and that's what happened. So I don't even know where that came from, but that's what happened. It was cool. So that's how we got the book. But if you look, there's a few other things in there. It says, who are you to say there is no God? That's not just in regular or italicized letters, it's in capital letters in this book. You look, and there's a few other changes that they've made that they didn't really tell. This is Bunky, or Dr. Jelnick, Yale University. He led the Institutes for Alcohol Study. He was a great guy. I don't know if you've seen the Jelnick chart. It shows you on the way down the bottom of alcoholism, on the way up, all the things that you change and all the great things that happen in your life. This guy was so cool. He locked himself in his office, drank a fifth of whiskey, trying to feel what alcoholics feel, and then he, passed out. And they pound on the door. They open the door and like, "What are you doing?" He's, "I'm trying to feel like an alcoholic." And of course, it didn't work. But they ran it until it took over. Well, now they call it, what is this? A chart of alcohol addiction and recovery. It's a Jelnick chart. That's how it was presented to me in 1979 by old Frank. He ran the St. Mary's Alcoholism Treatment Program. With the 20 questions. You guys ever have the 20 questions? And so I lied on 15 of them, admitted 5. He said, "Yeah, 75%, I'm not too bad." He said, "Well, if you answer one of these, yes, you're probably an alcoholic, but only you can decide." I'm like, who is this retard? What, come on. I mean, every bar I go to, they tell me I'm a drunk. You need to get the hell out of here. And, other words, you know what they say. I try not to use them out of respect for the program that saved my life. This is Lois. She passed in 88. She had an annual Easter party for orphan children that still goes on to this day. I've never been there because it's right on the weekend of Founders Day. But she was great. And you guys know the story about her whipping the shoe at Bill. He says, I don't know, one of the alcoholics had just jumped out of the building and committed suicide, whatever, and other things. And he says, she just got home from working at Macy's, and Bill said, "What's for dinner tonight, honey?" And he says, "You and your damn drunks, you can do whatever you want. I'm not doing it." And she took off her high heel and whipped it at Bill. So it was funny because I went to that 50th anniversary of the 55 International in St. Louis, and they had an Al-Anon lunch. And I got there, and they had, and I'd never been to an Al-Anon meeting, but they had, the centerpieces were made out of high heels. I said, "Oh, I know what that's about." And they all laughed. It's pretty funny. This is Bill at wit's end. And you notice there's a hole in his shoe because he didn't really care about that stuff. But this is where he wrote the 12 and 12. If you go there, they used to let you sit in the chair and put your feet on the desk. I don't know if they let you put your feet up, but you can still sit there. It's pretty cool. It's a little cabin up on the hill from Stepping Stones. It's an awesome experience. You should definitely go there too. This is Bill with the violin and Lois with the piano. They used to play when Gail was getting that talk ready for the 2005 International on History of the Big Book. I said, "You should include Bill playing the violin." So she did. It was really cool. They really loved it. It was awesome. They did that, I think, every Sunday or something. This is Bill and Ann, Dr. Bob and Ann, right in front of 855 Ardmore, Dr. Bob's house. This is the Wilson Inn. I don't know if you ever had a chance to go there. Bill was, in fact, born behind the bar in the Wilson house. I had a chance to go there in 1997. Earl husband was doing his 4th step series. And he calls me up the week before. We made reservations. If you're going there, you can stay there, but we reserved the rooms in January, and this meeting was in December. He calls me up and he says, "Hey, our Saturday speaker can't speak. Couldn't think of anyone else to speak but you." I said, "Me? At the Wilson house?" I'm like, all right. That was the first talk I gave on willingness, and some guy come up and argued with me after, "It's not the first step, it's the 3rd step." I says, I know where it is in the book, but if you're not willing, you're not going to admit that you're powerless over alcohol, and you're not going to make a decision, turn your will and your life over to them, or any of that stuff. You got to do that. And if you're willing, not the key. If you're willing, then you can do that. If you're not, you're going to die. No. Well, you might get lucky, but if you're willing, why not? Why not try something? Listen, I tell all my guys, listen, do whatever I tell you for 2 weeks. If it doesn't work, then try your own method. And we'll see. This is the infamous Lasker Award, the Headless Horseman Award, call it. But this is the one that we got the book passed with. And this is pretty cool. And Bill says, they wanted to give it to him himself. He said, "No, you got to give that to Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the whole group. It's not me." So it's once again a we program, and that's really cool. Actually, I saw the original in New York. The head isn't broken off. That's how they come. I thought they broke it off, some alcoholic dropped it or something, but it's pretty funny. This is Bill and Lois on the Harley. Somehow they got this picture of Bill driving, which never happened. It was always Lois, because Bill was in the sidecar reading reports of the next company they're going to. And it was usually asked. She drove the Harley all the time. Lois was a tough girl, just like Harriet down in South Florida. She was a delegate. She says, "You can call me a broad, but it's a tough broad." But you don't make these things up. But this is Dr. Bob with one of his the 46 Buick. Dr. Bob was a leadfoot. He used to pray going down the road, and he's a great guy, very humble. Bill called him the Prince of 12 Steppers, and this, of course, is the Bill Wilson painting of his passing in January 24th, 1971. And may God bless you. And keep you forever and ever. That's all. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.